Welcome to the Hashimoto's Doctor podcast. You're now part of a growing community of people determined to take their health back through education and self-empowerment. But because of the healthcare system today, we don't have access to the types of healthcare that we want. So we have to do things differently. We've got to do things smarter, and we do that by becoming our own advocates. This podcast will give you the perspective and thoughts of one of the world's leading Hashimoto's doctors. So let's get started. Hi everyone, Dr. Shook here. I hope you're doing well today. In today's podcast, I want to talk to you about the 10 most common signs and symptoms of hypothyroidism. And anytime I suspect that there's a problem with thyroid physiology, these are my go-to questions, the top 10 things that I see as problems for people that don't have optimal thyroid hormone physiology. Now note that I didn't say low thyroid hormone, because there are well over 40 or 50 ways that the thyroid physiology can break down from a number of different causes. Okay, so and it can become, when I say break down, I mean it can lose efficiency, and it can manifest in ways that are not obvious through observing or measuring your TSH or your thyroid hormones themselves, your T4, T3. So there are other physiological ways that the physiology can break down. So these are my top go-to questions that I'm thinking about whenever someone comes in, and I'm wondering, is this possibly a problem that's related to their thyroid physiology? So number one, and the biggest problem that we see with people that are hypothyroid, or that have, I should say, suboptimal or below optimal levels or below optimal thyroid hormone physiology. And number one is fatigue. Is there a problem with fatigue? If there's a problem with fatigue, if someone tells me that they're tired a lot, that they're very dependent upon stimulants, then I am wondering, why can they not produce energy? What is the problem here? Why are they unable to generate energy and feel awake, alert? You know, why do they feel tired all the time? Why are they so dependent upon stimulants? And so you have to look at a lot of different factors. But you think about this for a second. What is the physiological function of your thyroid hormone? Right? It is to drive a cellular response, to stimulate every single cell in your body, to stimulate it and drive a cellular response. So whatever that cell's function is, the thyroid hormone drives the metabolic engine of that cell so that it can complete its task and it can carry out its purpose. So when you have decreased or a lower stimulatory action of the thyroid hormone, you will have decreased cellular energy production, and that will, and most commonly results in fatigue. And this is an epidemic. I mean, there's so many people that are extremely fatigued and wired and tired, and it's, you know, you look at this, and we're talking about thyroid hormone and its impact on fatigue, but there's so many things that impact fatigue, that you have to look at this and you have to try and consider and keep in mind a lot of the other things that you want to rule out. So other possibilities and things that can drive fatigue. And this is, you know, my purpose of this podcast is not to go into an exhaustive list of those things, but it's to give you, look, do you think if you think you have a thyroid problem, or, you know, what do I think when I'm talking to someone, when I'm trying to determine based, you know, from their history, do they have thyroid-related symptomatology? Number one is going to be fatigue. Fatigue is number one, far and away, going to be one of the major indicators. Now, it's definitely not the only. You know, the second thing that I look at is, you know, is there weight gain? Is there a problem with metabolism? You know, do they have weight gain? Do they have difficulty losing weight, even when they try, right? When they're trying to restrict their calories. What about, do they have problems with weight gain or with losing weight with physical activity? So let's say someone changes their diet and they're exercising regularly for 3 or 4 weeks and they're not losing very much weight at all. Yeah, you can look at their approach that they're taking and see if they're doing it, properly. But in general, if everything remains the same, right, all of your dietary intake, let's say, and you increase physical activity, a lot of times just that alone is going to result in you burning an increased number of calories, and you should have, a total or net loss of calories, and therefore over time there should be some changes in your metabolic rate, your changes in your muscle mass, and your body weight typically goes down. And that's with leaving the diet the same. If you make a conscientious effort to reduce sugar, eat more whole foods, and even look at your calorie intake and try to approximate what's an appropriate caloric intake for you, and you exercise, and you're still having problems with weight loss, well, that's a big red flag that there's a metabolic problem. And again, so what does the thyroid hormone do? It stimulates the energy production of the cells so that the cells can carry out their physiological functions. So if you don't have adequate stimulation of the cell, you're not going to have adequate energy production. You're going to have problems with your metabolism. Absolutely going to have problems with your metabolism. And just, as one side note here, a lot of times when people have very poor recovery from exercise, this is also something I'm trying to rule in and rule out as a possible problem. They exercise and they don't recover for a week. Well, that's a problem. You should recover faster than that, especially after exercising for a month or so, doing it more repetitiously so that your body becomes better conditioned. The first time you do it, you might be sore for a week if you really stress your body. But we have to just look at everything in the context of your individual needs. But weight gain and resistance to weight loss, even with diet and exercise, huge red flag for a metabolic issue and potential for thyroid problem. Number 3 is feeling cold. So if you feel cold when most other people feel fine, that's also a red flag, because your thyroid hormone stimulates your cellular metabolism, and it does have an impact on thermoregulatory function, or your temperature. I do not like checking the axillary temperature, or the temperature under the arm when you wake up in the morning. It has not been scientifically validated. It has been used for a long time it's been used for a long time. But it's not, I do not think, there are so many other hormones and so many other physiological processes that contribute to your body temperature. Just trying to say, hey, this is my temperature being, a degree lower or so, or whatnot, is, you can't say that that's the thyroid, that's your thyroid hormone alone, because there's so many other mechanisms that control your body temperature. Okay? So really, really important to understand that. Number 4, I'd say this is a big problem that I see too: dry hair and skin. So, do you have problems with your hair and your skin being dry all the time? If you do, that's very likely a thyroid problem, a physiological issue with your thyroid hormone. And so we've got to look at your thyroid hormone physiology and see if that is a contributing factor. But we see this quite a bit. And your skin's not going to be great if your metabolism, if your skin cells are not properly stimulated to repair and regenerate. If the cellular response isn't adequate, you're going to have problems. Same thing with your hair. So you've got to keep this in mind. Hypothyroidism or decreased thyroid hormone physiological activity can create problems with your skin and hair. Absolutely, 100%. Hair loss. Number 5, hair loss. Hair loss is absolutely a problem. We see it a lot with hypothyroidism when there's poor thyroid hormone physiology or physiological stimulation of the cells. This can be a very big issue, and it's something that we've got to look at. So hair loss, we always want to look at this. And yes, there are other problems and other things we want to look at and consider as well. I very commonly find that there are problems with iron. There are problems with dihydrotestosterone, which is a very potent form of testosterone that can be created, that we've got to check for. You've got to look at a lot of things when you're looking at hair loss. You've got to look at blood flow, which can be thyroid related. You've got to look at a lot of things. I've got a guidebook on hair loss that's about 28 pages long, where I tried to go through and give people information on the factors that contribute to hair loss. And it's the most comprehensive guide on hair loss that I've ever found, and that I've created, because I looked at everything that I could to determine how to help people best understand the possible contributing factors. And there are a lot of contributing factors, but thyroid hormone is a huge one that you've got to consider. Number 6, menstrual irregularities. Listen, anytime, let me tell you, anytime you have symptoms of hormonal imbalance, okay? Hormonal imbalance. Any symptoms of hormonal imbalance, whether that's blood sugar dysregulatory function, so you've got high or low blood sugar, you've got male or female hormone irregularities, low or high, any of your hormones are off. You've always got to rule out thyroid dysfunction. Always. And why is that? Why do you have to rule out thyroid if you have menstrual irregularities? Well, because the thyroid hormone sets the rate of metabolism for every cell in the body, including the ovaries, the cells of the brain, the pituitary gland, all of the endocrine glands that produce hormones that signal one another have their metabolic rate set by thyroid hormone. So you could have dysfunction anywhere if the thyroid physiology is not sound and is not working optimally. So rule out thyroid with any type of hormonal irregularities, especially menstrual included. So it's very important to understand that. Number 7, edema. So do you have swelling anywhere? Do you have swelling? Are you retaining fluid? If so, we've really got to look at thyroid hormone physiology, because there are a lot of mechanisms through which the thyroid hormone can and may affect your electrolyte balance intracellularly, intravascularly, and that could contribute to edema. And so anyway, if you have swelling or any of these issues, you've got to look at the thyroid hormone physiology and see if there's a potential problem there. Number 8, muscle aches and joint pain. Huge issues. I will say this: when I first started into practice, I was working with, I wanted to try and help people that I thought had, a really great need. And I saw a huge population of people that were suffering with fibromyalgia. And I started diving into it head first. And it's, fibromyalgia is basically a labeling of a person with a certain set of symptoms, right? Pain above and below the body for over 6 months. They have tenderness of 11 of 18 points. And if you do have that, they call it fibromyalgia, which just means chronic pain, right? Above and below the body. There's no understanding. Fibromyalgia as a diagnosis does nothing to give you clarity on what is causing those symptoms. And I'll tell you that whenever we did extensive testing and started digging with people that had fibromyalgia, we found a lot of things that were common problems that we would discover. And the most common problem that we came across was a thyroid hormone physiological breakdown. There's a problem with their thyroid hormone physiology. And remember, and there's a lot of potential complex mechanisms there. There's a lot of things that could be occurring from pain, central pain, which is sensitization of the pain pathways that can occur through a lot of different proposed mechanisms. But anyway, hypersensitivity, this what we call centralized pain, which is basically the efficiency of transmission of pain signals to the brain. And so there's a lot of different problems, there's a lot of different theories on how to approach that. What I commonly find is that when we had fibromyalgia, the only way we really helped those people was to address every metabolic problem that we could find. Thyroid physiological problems, looking for drivers of inflammatory processes, looking for deficiencies, nutrient and vitamin and mineral deficiencies, looking for anything that was off metabolically that we could improve. We would work on improving it, and then we worked on neurologically trying to improve their increased sensitivity to any type of stimulation, to their pain pathways. They're basically working with the nervous system, working with the brain, working with their peripheral nerves, and primarily doing getting them moving was, I would say, probably one of the most important things that we could do. Getting them to use a hand bike, and I don't want to digress here and stay on this too long, but it's really important to understand with muscle aches and joint pain that you've got to rule out thyroid, because metabolically it affects every single cell throughout the body. Okay, and there's a lot of physiology that may suffer due to inefficient thyroid physiological stimulation at the level of the cell, okay, of every cell in your body. Number 9, constipation. Boy, this is a huge one. Whenever you see constipation with someone, you always have to rule out hypothyroidism, because decreased thyroid hormone stimulation of the cells will contribute to constipation. This is a classic symptom that, if you haven't heard this before, this is a classic sign of hypothyroidism, and one that you need to be aware of. So if you're constipated, you need to have your thyroid physiology checked from A to Z, from as thoroughly as possible, to see if there's any breakdowns in the physiology. That's a big one. You listen. Your elimination is so critical. It's so critical. It's so critical for I think ideal GI tract health, ideal microbiome health and function, which is your mix of bacteria, fungi, bacteria in the GI tract. There's also with elimination, if you're not eliminating daily at least, then you're going to be more likely to reabsorb metabolic byproducts. Your body, whenever you make hormones, your body takes your hormones. So let's talk about estrogens, for example. Takes your estrogens, and your liver will break them down through break the estrogens down so your body can eliminate them through 2 different phases of detoxification. There's phase 1 detoxification and phase 2. Some people do not pass the estrogens through phase 2 very well, and they can have a lot of these, what we call estrogen byproducts, or estrogen metabolites that are not properly eliminated, and they can have a high amount of these. Other people, they'll have these estrogens will be broken down, put into the stool, and the stool will carry them out where they'll eliminate them through their feces, obviously. And if you have this stagnancy, this constipation, then you may reabsorb some of those metabolized estrogens back through the GI tract wall into the bloodstream, where they're then recirculated, and they can be very problematic. So this is a big deal. Constipation, you cannot be constipated. If you're constipated, this is a big red flag for suboptimal thyroid function. And then depression. Number 10, depression. These are my top things that I'm looking for. I see this quite a bit when there's low thyroid hormone physiological activity, that you can have signs of depression, and it really, there are various studies out there on, for example, just administering T3, which is the active physiological thyroid hormone, just administering that to people that are depressed and seeing changes in their depression. Now, I'm not advocating that that's the right thing to do. I think that, if you're depressed, that's a complex topic, and it's beyond just thyroid hormone, but it is absolutely something that has to be considered. Absolutely 100% something that has to be considered. So I'm looking at, let's just recap. Okay, I'm looking, number 1, is this person fatigued? Do they have weight gain or resistance to weight loss with exercise and dieting? Do they feel cold a lot? Do they have cold hands and feet, cold tip of the nose? Do they have dry hair and skin? Do they have hair loss? Do they have menstrual irregularities? Do they have edema or swelling? Do they have muscle aches and joint pain? Are they constipated? And is there depression? These are all things that we want to look at that can give us clues as to the potential for dysregulated or suboptimal thyroid hormone physiology. So I hope this helps to give you some insights and some things to think about that you want to consider if you're trying to figure out, hey, is there a thyroid problem? A lot of people know they have thyroid related issues that I work with. They already know that, but they just know that something else is going on because they still don't feel well, even if they're taking medications. Or I work with 2 different groups of people. I work with people that are they're on a thyroid hormone replacement, but they still don't feel well. They still don't feel good. Or I work with people that are told that everything's okay, right? You don't have a thyroid problem. And there's a lot of other, but they have all the symptoms of it. And so there's a lot of different breakdowns that can occur there that we often need to work up. And I guess actually I work with, the most common people that I work with are people with autoimmunity and Hashimoto's, autoimmune thyroid condition. So anyway, I hope this helps you guys better have some ideas and clues as to whether or not you might have a thyroid-related issue. If you have any questions or concerns, please do let us know. Reach out to my team and I, and we'll do everything that we can to help you. But I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And remember, it's my mission to help you improve your quality of life. If we do that, if we can help you, then that will make a positive impact on your family, your community, and ultimately that's how we're going to change the world one person at a time. But I appreciate you guys. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. If you need anything, let us know. Thanks. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed hanging out behind the scenes with Dr. Shook. You can also talk with and learn from Dr. Shook through Facebook Live on our Facebook page at the Office of Dr. Brad Shook. Don't forget, you can also get access to our videos, guidebooks, and thyroid programs at www.drbradshook.com. Oh yeah, and don't forget one more thing. We can change the world one person, one family, and one community at a time. Until next time, remember, today is your day, and no one will tell you who you are and what you can be.